engagement and development. Stay tuned for those future dates to be announced. A few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. Please keep yourself on mute throughout the webinar to avoid background noise and interference. Please use the chat feature to ask questions. Melinda Gigante and Pam Fine will be monitoring the chat throughout the presentation. As time allows, we will host a Q&A at the end and collect any unanswered questions to answer at a later time. A special thank you to Melinda and Pam for all the prep work and logistics leading to today's event. We are excited to have everyone here for our first workshop, Revitalizing Retail Districts in the Midst of COVID-19. This session will discuss the new reality that exists for both economic development professionals and the business community they serve, examining what can be done to revitalize retail districts and support businesses that have been impacted by COVID-19. Your presenters, who have been a pleasure to work with, are David Lucas. David is a loan officer with the National Development Council's Grow America Fund, serving the communities of Cuyahoga County, Cincinnati, Detroit, Michigan, and Buffalo, New York. David's primary responsibilities are to originate and underwrite SBA 7A loans. Kevin Schmatzer is the Executive of Small Business Development with the City of Cleveland's Department of Economic Development, where he is responsible for creating and implementing programs, financial incentives, and economic development tools that attract entrepreneurship and small business development to the City of Cleveland. Michael Elliott has over 15 years of combined multi-sector experience. As the Director of Neighborhood Economic Development with Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, Michael is responsible for the advancement of CNP's economic development agenda, which includes serving as a liaison to partner organizations participating in the Cleveland Chain Reaction Project and the Business Growth Collaborative, as well as supporting related efforts led by CDC partners to advance small business growth in Cleveland's neighborhoods. It is my pleasure to turn the program and host feature over to my colleague, Mr. Michael Elliott.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity to join this, what I believe to be a great webinar/workshop that's bringing together several partners at the same time to really discuss about the impacts that's going on within our particular neighborhoods. I'd like to start off with good news. I know there's a lot of issues that we're experiencing as practitioners on a day-to-day basis. So I'd like to start off with some good news, maybe that national outlook of what's going on regarding our small businesses and their perception as far as the current state of affairs. So there's increased optimism among businesses, business owners across the country. It's good to know, based on the MetLife and U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Coronavirus Poll, almost 90% of businesses that were surveyed reported that their businesses are open in some capacity. That capacity could be fully operational, could be partial, limited hours, but again, there's a good trend that's coming around out there that many businesses are definitely opening up. Fewer businesses perceive, which I thought was a very good and interesting point to bring up, is that fewer small businesses perceive the local economy as in poor health when compared to the national economy. And sometimes I really think that as a result of all the doom and gloom that we kind of hear, it's good to know that on a local level, in the neighborhood level, that many entrepreneurs have a very upbeat, positive outlook on their local economy. 55% of small businesses report overall good health. Now, this is actually down from when this previous report was done. But again, businesses are really feeling positive about what's going on despite having been impacted. And lastly, small businesses anticipate increasing their staffing within the next year. So again, this really shows that really, hey, I know that we're in bad times right now, but again, I think really to me, it really comes down to that spirit of entrepreneurship. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you have to think positive. You have to think about, hey, life is going to get better. Business is going to get better if you're going to be a good entrepreneur. But they are very cautious. 2/3 of small businesses are concerned about having to close again or stay closed if a second wave of COVID-19 hits. As a result, business owners have taken steps to purchase additional supplies, inventory, updating their website, social media, and increasing the e-commerce offerings and purchasability for clients. And an interesting thought, again, I'm bringing this up, the 13% reporting investing in accounting software, which I'm very pleased because it's one of the major challenges that keeps businesses from accessing capital, which we'll talk about later on within this webinar. So folks, there's no roadmap to what we're doing. I'm going to say that word, it's unprecedented times for many folks within our country. A lot of smart people are really trying to get their mind around what do we do, what's next. And one thing I'm learning is that we're learning as we go. And so as part of this workshop, I'm hoping that in the chat feature, we all can be engaged. If there's any thoughts that come up to mind, any examples that you know of as far as you can share a link, please do so in the chat. What I'm hoping is that we can take the information, collectively learn together, and hopefully compile that information that we can report out to also to the larger group as well too. All right, so I'm going to give it over to Kevin right quick, who's going to talk about some COVID-19 small business impacts.
Thank you, Michael. So we've all seen and heard several businesses that are closing, but in addition to some of these businesses that have closed, there's impacts what they have on the community. And it's not only just the loss of the jobs, the tax base, but it's the community identity. I mean, many of these small businesses that are within our respective neighborhoods, they make the definition. They define who our neighbors are, who we are. And by losing this, we will lose that identity. And the other piece that we also lose are the volunteer efforts. You know, these small business owners and their employees who volunteer for neighborhood cleanups, things like that. All of a sudden, if they close up business and they move away, you lose that effort. You lose those volunteer efforts. So those go away. Next slide, please. So who's going to be impacted the most out of all what's been going on? Who has and will be impacted the most? Next slide, please. So we have large corporate retail stores. I'm sure many of you have been to Pier 1, 9, Neiman Marcus, JCPenney, Sears, Kohl's, Ann Taylor, Brooks Brothers, Sur La Table. I was actually just there right before the shutdown. Bon-Ton, Steinmart, GNC, Vitamin Shop. What do they all have in common? They either have or are filing for bankruptcy. These are stores that have been around a long time, and these are corporate stores. This is by a report from the S&P Global Market Intelligence. You know, in addition, this is just a sampling, but there are other large corporate stores that are in financial bankruptcy or knocking on the door will file a financial bankruptcy. Some will make it, some will not. I think with these larger corporate stores, with their boards, they have deeper pockets and some funds that could probably weather the storm. But again, some probably will not. Next slide, please. Or even some of these restaurant chains, you know, BJ's Restaurants, Shake Shack, Cheesecake Factory, you know, Outback Steakhouse, Dave & Buster's, Chuck E. Cheese. Yes, that is true, kids. Chuck E. Cheese, you know, IHOP and Denny's. How many of us have gone for the Moons Over Miami late at night, you know? California Pizza and Pizza Hut, they are all in trouble, these big chains. Next slide, please. But who's going to be impacted the most? It's our mom and pops. The mom and pop restaurants are going to be impacted the most. They do not have the boards, they do not have the deep pockets and the financial investment that some of them that I listed will be able to weather this storm. Next slide, please, Michael. Who have we lost so far already just in this short amount of time? These are just a few. Many of you listening here, I'm sure you probably have been to and supported on multiple occasions. Many of these entrepreneurs right here in our backyard, these are entrepreneurs, minority-owned businesses, female-owned businesses, and they were around, they were successful, and they're gone. And I can tell you, I've been to all of these except one on this list. And they were great establishments, they were hardworking, and they were involved in our communities too. And they're not around anymore. Next slide, please. But it's not just restaurants also. These are other neighborhood retail service businesses that are having challenges. You know, these are neighborhood retail businesses that sell goods and services, you know, our general store type businesses, where we go to get our hair done, our nails done, our barber shops. All of these businesses also have been impacted severely by what's going on right now. And somehow we got to figure out how we have to help them and help them stick around. Next slide, please. But what can we do? What can we do to save them? Do we have a magic wand? Do we just sit there and do we pray? Do we run away? Do we just give out a helping hand? Or do we also think about some ideas and thoughts and creative ways to help save these entrepreneur businesses? Next slide, please. Here's something I want everybody to think about. I'm going to read this. Remember all the local small businesses that you've asked for years and years to donate and sponsor your sports teams and clubs, the school events, fundraising events. Well, they're calling in a favor. And we all need to answer and respond to that call.
Well, what can community development corporations do to help and save and maintain our retail districts? Well, here, let's just start off why CDCs, and this can also apply to economic development practitioners as well. One of the things that CDCs have, and the local economic development practitioners, they have a very comprehensive economic development perspective of their neighborhood. One of the things that I love about CDCs more specifically is that they are really on the ground helping businesses in a very unique way. Some of the stories I've always heard about when it comes to CDCs is that when everyone's kind of left the office at 5 o'clock, it's usually CDCs are getting those phone calls after hours, basically saying, hey, you know, there's some type of disruption in my particular neighborhood, or, you know, there is some type of issue that I'm having with a particular someone down the street. So what is, CDCs have a very comprehensive perspective on economic development within their particular neighborhoods. They're also very good advocates on behalf of small businesses and residents as well too. Again, this ties into the first point. Because many of them actually live within the neighborhood or very close to the neighborhoods that they serve, economic development practitioners who are housed within CDCs play a pivotal role when it comes to advocating on behalf of small businesses. A resource and information repository. So one of the things that the local CDCs have been doing a great job in is taking information that they're hearing from the federal, state, and local level. And at the very beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, they've been doing an excellent job in making sure they get that information out to businesses as well as residents as well too. They've become a trusted resource when it comes to helping residents as well as business owners figure out what to do next. And then because of their connection to the neighborhood, they're able to share and create and think of creative ideas and actually be able to tell excellent stories about their experiences as well. Ultimately, your work helps to create opportunities and improves and retains the quality of life for both businesses, for both residents and businesses during the crisis. Here's a quote that I'm going to read from the Vice President of Revitalization Program. Long-term e-commerce cannot serve as a replacement for what humans need and crave: connections to people, place, and products that speak to their individual nature. I'm going to move on. So basically what this is telling me is that CDCs as well as economic development practitioners, when it comes to retail districts, they offer something that you can't get from an Amazon.com or you can't get from a Walmart.com. People are really craving for these experiences. I'm thinking about other neighborhoods as well too, like Crocker Park and Legacy Village. These places were built to kind of give you that experience that you're kind of getting away. They have a very urban vibe. And one of the things that's very unique for Cleveland and major urban districts is that we already have that naturally here. So here's some thoughts and ideas to consider. Revisit prior survey results or develop new ones. Data is key. So one of the things that I know that our business owners have probably been tired of seeing all the time is all the surveys that they've been doing since the pandemic. CDCs as well as other economic development practitioners have been doing a very good job of reaching out to business owners, getting a pulse of what they're going through. But I'm going to make a recommendation that we maybe revisit that information that we've been collecting. Revisit that information with the goal of actually looking at it, thinking through it, and actually figuring out a plan or strategic plans to actually move forward from it, or develop new ones. So for example, a lot of the surveys have been going out when it comes to small businesses. Maybe we need to start considering issuing surveys for the actual residents in our particular area, finding out what is it that's important to them. Again, as we saw at the very beginning of the slide, there's a lot of good optimism out there when it comes to the future, when it comes to pandemic. Maybe the residents are feeling that same way as well too, and maybe there's a way to get that information out from those particular residents so that we can use that data to help the businesses make more informed decisions about how to move forward. Develop strong local shop local campaigns that will support your retail districts. Our retail districts within the city of Cleveland are in competition with other suburbs as well too. And one of the things that I'm really encouraging everyone is that we can begin really promoting our particular retail districts as safe places, healthy places, places that you can come and actually get that experience that everyone is looking for. Encourage social media like Instagram and Facebook. Now, one of the things that I also want to maybe bring up here is the importance of leveraging our website, leveraging our distribution list to help support our businesses. At the very beginning of the pandemic, many of the CDCs, many of the economic development organizations throughout the city have been leveraging their websites, posting who's open, so let residents know what's going on. Continue to do that work. A lot of small businesses, unfortunately, don't have the time or the resources to actually post on social media. We can provide a helping hand to those businesses as well too. And encourage collaboration between businesses and each other as well too. I'm really big on home-based businesses and really, I got this kind of internal mission to really help those businesses and draw them out of the home and into retail areas as well too. So one of the things that I've been thinking about as far as CDCs as well as other economic development practitioners can begin doing is allowing businesses or connecting the dots where businesses may not see. So for example, if you know of any kind of home-based business within your particular neighborhood, work with the local, try to integrate them somehow, some way into your retail districts as well too. That diversity and the retail shops that are available may begin to bring out more business as well, or drive businesses within that particular neighborhood. So case studies. We'll take a look at some examples of what's been doing, not only here locally here in Cleveland, but also throughout the country as well too. So I'd like to give special shout out to the CDCs here locally. I really do appreciate all the work that you have doing on behalf of the residents, on behalf of the government officials. One such CDC doing something to address the COVID-19 issues amongst their retail districts is Old Brooklyn. Old Brooklyn started 2 grant programs, the Digital Improvement Grant Program, as well as the Physical Distancing Program. This was unexpected for many businesses as far as COVID-19. And one of the things that Old Brooklyn has been doing is making sure they can address some of those financial burdens when it comes to upgrading their digital platforms, whether that's e-commerce or providing funding for businesses able to do some social distancing. So Old Brooklyn is one CDC locally that's really trying to lead an effort to help support small businesses within the area. Another CDC that I would like to make mention is also Metro West. Now, Metro West, this is in the very early stages, but one of the things that they're doing is kind of thinking past the summer months. They're kind of thinking about the fall and the winter months when it comes to making sure they're driving customers into their retail district. So what's unique about this program is that they're beginning to think about, hey, this is an election season. How do we capture that momentum and helping drive customers down into particular retail districts? So what they're doing is working with economic development practitioners or organizations, as well as democracy partners, in an effort to help increase customer traffic into retail districts and stores. Basically, they're leveraging the fact that we're looking to get more people out to vote and have actually engaging the businesses in that process is hoping to be a strategy that will actually increase traffic into those particular residential districts. More to come about this as well too. Now I have family out in Arizona, so I have the opportunity to go out west to actually kind of see what's going on. One of the things that I was very excited about is the City of Sun Surprise, Arizona. They launched a banner campaign that was able to connect businesses and customers. One of the things as businesses started to open, they wanted to make sure that the signage was very clear about what areas, what retail districts, what businesses are open. So small businesses in that particular area were able to, for free, get signage that you see at the very bottom of the screen there to post in front of their shops, as well as in their windows as well too. Now what's unique about this project is for every business that reopened, they did a short video of the reopening for that business and posted that on their social media site. Again, another way to actually promote the retail districts as well as the businesses within that particular area. Now what's also nice is that those businesses were actually able to win prizes as a result of the voting that was being done by the local residents as well too. Now, local residents was also able to win prizes as well too, gift cards for participating within the initiative as well too. So we got one more example that's going to be brought up by Kevin.
Yeah, this is especially for anybody who's very tech savvy on this. So one of the creative programs that I saw was down at Chattanooga, and this was the Help Chattanooga service industry. And every time you drink at home, social distancing, consider tipping a local service industry worker through Venmo or another cash app. The tipping also could be set up to go directly to the business owner too. This raised thousands of dollars for various employees and workers and businesses in the city of Chattanooga. Again, these are just creative ideas to help our respective small businesses. And just one other thing before we move on from this, just going back locally, and these are just two other examples I'm just going to throw out locally that were done here is Famicos with Carolyn Smith. She was like the old-fashioned Avon lady from the 70s and 80s. She was out there knocking on the doors, just talking with the respective businesses, and she was out there. So that's just an example of what Famicos did, that Carolyn Smith did, to connect and talk about and brief the businesses. And then on the other end, more from a different perspective with the businesses, Ashley Shaw of Ohio City also is out there, pushing out there to all the partners businesses, the latest and greatest of all the financial incentives to help keep them afloat. Again, these are just two small examples. There are many others I know our CDCs also have done. Due to time constraints, we don't have time to go through that, but just a few creative things of what's going on there to help our respective small businesses.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Michael.
Small business resources. So one of the things that we're very fortunate in Northeast Ohio is that we have a lot of resources available to our small businesses to address a wide range of different challenges and issues that may be. I want to take a time to really go over two of those resources that one is just started, and I think one is being underutilized. And then after that, we'll talk about some other resources. So recently announced was the Business Growth Compass. Now, this was a program developed by the Greater Cleveland Partnership, their Equity Inclusion Department. This initiative, or this tool basically, I'll call it a tool, provides entrepreneurs and business owners a very one-stop shop place where you can gain access to resources, or at least resource providers and capital. So the very easy to use, very quick website can be used by both practitioners as well as for the business owners. And if you follow the link, We'll also put that information in the chat as well too. It's a very simple, straightforward a tool to use for small businesses who, from what we're hearing a lot, is a lot of business, because of the so many small business service providers out there and capital providers, many businesses have expressed that they're a little bit confused about where to start. So we're hoping that this particular tool, again, the Business Growth Compass, is going to be an effective way to making sure that businesses are connected to the resources as well. I'm hoping to work with the Business Growth Collaborative as well as GCP to hopefully put on a very quick demo of this particular tool here. Another, I think, underutilized tool that the City of Cleveland has made available to businesses as well as practitioners is their website. Under the Do Business here, you have the ability to really get an understanding of the local market here within the City of Cleveland. One of the things that we have to do a better job is making sure that we're getting information to our businesses. And one of the things that I think has been great is that this tool here provides information, insight to businesses as well as practitioners when it comes to learning about the business climate, industry trends, workforce, customers, competition. I really believe that this particular website is very underutilized, and I just want to make sure I bring that up on behalf of the City of Cleveland. Kevin, did you have any additional comments about the website?
No, I think just on the top of the website there is just a link directly, so you don't have to go searching it for the COVID resources that we have. So if you go to the website, www.makeitincleveland.org, at the very top, you don't have to go searching for it. There's the link for the COVID-19 resources. Very easy, very simple.
All right.
Thank you.
Any questions so far or thoughts? Or is there any questions in the chat?
There aren't any questions in the chat right now, but Jessica put a link in there saying that Cleveland has Cleveland Tips, and she put the website in there. And then Joe Duffy included a link to the BGC tool and with the website, and said that it's user-friendly. So I just wanted to bring everyone's attention to those comments in the chat.
Open up to any couple of questions from anyone?
Or if anybody has any shared success stories, please indicate that also in the chat box too. If we would like to share those.
All right, if there's none, we'll just continue on. All right, so we're going to hand this section over to accessing capital during COVID-19. This particular part of the presentation will be led by David Lucas.
Thanks, Michael. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good morning, everybody. So again, I'm a loan officer with the Grow America Fund. We're a national SBA 7A lender. But I primarily work here in Cuyahoga County. I'm sure I worked with several of you over the past 5 years that I've been in this role. We're responsible for administering a revolving loan fund on behalf of Cuyahoga County. And so almost all of my time is spent talking to local small business owners, but also small business owners from around the country. I processed several million in PPP loans over the past few months. So I really have heard a lot of stories and just have had a lot of exposure to small businesses right now. And I hope that perspective on the lending landscape it will be useful to the CDC community, and hopefully you can bring some guidance back to your small businesses. But my goal really is to provide you with some of that feedback, but really hit the broad strokes of it. If you have any specific scenarios or questions or just trends that you're noticing in your neighborhoods, I'd love to hear about them because this is really a good opportunity for all of us to sort of pool our knowledge and share our resources together. So with that, Michael, go ahead in advance. The next slide here is a poll that was conducted by Size Up, and I think it's a good way to frame our discussion. You can see here the slide was asking economic development organizations which resources have local businesses communicated that they need the most. And a vast majority of the capital that is needed, or even resources altogether that is needed, is financial resources specifically to address the losses that have been incurred due to the pandemic. Small business owners overwhelmingly have expressed the need for funding to sort of stay afloat or even to just to stay open. Next slide. I know from some early feedback to Michael that there were a lot of questions related to capital and specifically loans. And so here are some of the things I'm going to try and answer today. First, is capital even available right now? Are lenders lending right now? Why are businesses getting denied for financing? What are lenders looking for when they are able to approve a loan? We'll look at some examples, some ways businesses are sort of adapting to this environment. Michael mentioned a couple earlier in the presentation, but there are some best practices that I've noticed that may be obvious to some, but worth sharing. And then we'll look at an example of a local business who I think really just fits the ideal description of a business that has been able to adapt right now and even thrive. And then finally, I'll offer what insight I can as to how CDCs can be a resource for small businesses as it relates to them preparing for a financing event. Ultimately, it's in the hands of the small business. You know, they have to put themselves in the best position. But there are some things that CDCs can do, in my view, so I'll offer some suggestions about that. But again, I'm really just going to touch on some general observations. I really would love to see what's happening on the ground level. So if you do have any insights you want to share, just go ahead and do so in the chat. And then before I finish, I'll make sure to put my contact information in the chat as well, in case anyone has any questions or even businesses that they think I should be working with. So go ahead, Michael. Here's a recap of some of the various forms of assistance that businesses have been eligible for, or maybe still eligible for. I'm not going to talk about them in detail because I think a lot of us already know about some of these programs. But I really just want to illustrate a vast majority of them have been offered through governmental sources, and there's a good reason for that. We have seen some involvement from the private sector, but most of those dollars have flowed through CDFIs, community development financial institutions, or nonprofits. But starting with the federal government, one that's not widely known about or talked about, which was part of the CARES Act, is SBA payment relief. So any business that had an existing SBA loan or closes an SBA loan in the next couple of weeks gets 6 months of payments made for them by the federal government, by the SBA. It's kind of like how many of us who have federal student loans, we haven't had to pay them, but it's different in that the payments are being made on the SBA loans. They're just being made by the government. So it's a tremendous resource, and it's a good reason to consider SBA for businesses while we're kind of navigating these murky waters, because things like this may happen again down the road. So we also may know about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or the EIDL, and then there's a grant component that came with that. That program was primarily meant to offset losses that occurred as a result of COVID. So it was a pretty specific purpose to cover losses or just lost revenue in general. We all know about the Paycheck Protection Program. If I never have to hear that phrase again, I'll be happy, unless it's in the context of a second round of PPP, then I'll be happy for small businesses. But it was very impactful. It was just a very busy time in all of our lives. But it was awesome to be able to get near grant money out to small businesses. So that of course that was specifically to cover payroll based on historic payroll. And then we had some enhancements on employment. In the private sector, we saw some grant programs. Kevin, you mentioned what was it? Verizon did one. I know Facebook did one. Square did one.
It was Citizens Bank a few weeks ago had the the program for grants up to $15,000 for minority-owned entrepreneurs. They released it on a Monday, and the date closed on a Friday, so it was a very short 4-day window of that opportunity.
Yeah, and it seems like programs like that have sort of popped up, here and there, and there's a tight window, but they're national programs. It's very hard for businesses to compete, and it's definitely worth their time filling out an application. Usually they're quick applications, but I haven't heard of very many local businesses that have taken advantage of those programs. And if anyone knows of any, I'd love to hear about them, because I'd love to know what national dollars have made their way into our local economy. But I think a majority of the relief from the private sector has come in the form of businesses that have existing loans, kind of like the SBA payment relief, where the private sector, where banks will offer loan modifications, loan deferments, things like that. So they're being more patient with capital that's already out, but they're not necessarily getting new capital out. So the next is the state and local government. There's a lot of initiatives that occur all around the country at the state and local level. Some that we may know of. First is the Cuyahoga County Stabilization Fund. I have to plug that because National Development Council, my organization, partnered with the county and several other local partners like ECDI. I shouldn't start naming because I don't know the whole list, but there's a lot of local partners on board that helped put a pool together of grants and loan money under the county program. And those funds are still available. So our program does $10,000 stabilization loans. It's like a 0.5% interest. And it's a very, very business friendly repayment schedule. So it was created to specifically be a lifeline and to get businesses through the emergency phase, which some are still in. Some, many aren't out of the woods yet. So let me know if any businesses that anyone knows of might be in need of the $10,000 stabilization loan. We know that, before I skip that, City of Lakewood had a rent assistance program. I thought that was great because it addressed rent specifically, which many businesses are struggling to pay that fixed cost while they can't really operate out of their space, or they're operating at a much lesser capacity. But that rent expense is a fixed cost, and usually a pretty big one. So the City of Lakewood came up with a program to address that. I thought it was great. I'd love to see that more. Then demographic specific funds, kind of in tandem with the Cuyahoga County Stabilization Fund. There's a lot of local effort to get funding to the hardest hit demographics. So minority-owned businesses, female-owned businesses that have historically not had access to capital, even during the good times. There's a lot of effort to keep those businesses afloat because they're having an even harder time to get capital right now. Loan modifications and deferments, similar to the federal and private banking programs. Governmental debt is usually already very patient and already on very good terms, very business-friendly terms. But there's also a lot of room for flexibility with restructuring that debt or even just deferring payments on that debt. So a lot of our local governmental entities have really stepped up and provided some relief to the fixed costs of small businesses, reducing their monthly overhead, increasing their cash flow by just pausing debt payments for a few months. And then we'll look at a couple examples. We'll look at a national example. There's a program in Clark County. I'll talk about that on the next slide. But they created a grant program that was specifically designed to address PPE and training for businesses that are reopening under these much different public safety and public health standards. And then Kevin will talk about the City of Cleveland's working capital and PPE loan program. But before we advance, I have to also mention it gets one bullet, unfortunately, on this slide, but the impact shouldn't be measured by the amount of space it takes on the slide. The philanthropic and nonprofit sources are always some of the first, and it's usually the immediate response. One of the first responses to to an emergency or to a public health crisis or to any kind of economic crisis. So really between the nonprofit and the public sector, that's where a majority of the resources come in when it comes to relief and economic assistance.
Yeah, David, if I could just throw in, right away from a micro small business perspective, HFLA, Hebrew Free Loan Association, which is one of our financial partners, they were right at the table right from the very beginning. Again, there's many others, but if I have to just throw one out there from a small micro business perspective, they were there to help the smallest of small businesses.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
David, there is a question in the chat,
Yeah.
if you don't mind taking it. A question from Thomas Jordan says, how long did you say SBA payment relief would be available?
So it started in March, end of March, when the CARES Act was put into law. So at that point, any businesses that had an SBA loan as of the April 1st payment is when the 6-month payment relief began. So for businesses that already had SBA loans, they'd be making their first payment on October 1st. But that applies to new SBA debt as well. So loans that close, I believe by the end of September, are eligible for that 6-month payment relief. Well, I should take that back. It ends at the end of the year. At least that's how it's written right now. I don't know if it's going to be extended, but so any debt that closes by the end of September would at least get their monthly payments deferred until the end of the year. There are some caveats to that, though. The debt can't be in an interest-only period. I don't want to get too into it, but if there's a construction loan, for instance, and the loan isn't fully dispersed, then it wouldn't meet the deadline for that. So if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them, but just know that businesses have about another month to close and get that a benefit on a fully dispersed SBA loan. All right, good question, thank you. So this program in Clark County, Nevada, we really liked it because it was specifically created to address the new costs associated with operating a small business under these public health standards. Sure, small businesses are grateful to get to reopen, but we kind of glance over the costs of that come with that, such as purchasing PPE, plexiglass barriers, Clorox wipes, hand sanitizer, thermometers, things like that are a new fixed cost to the small business, or even employee training. Employees need to be trained now in how to go about operating in this new norm. So, and Clark County is very unique, very interesting in that a vast majority of the county is unincorporated. Aside from a few pockets that you can see on the map there, almost the entire county is unincorporated. There's the Las Vegas Strip and some of the immediately surrounding areas of the Strip, but just outside of that, and even just south of the Strip, it's unincorporated, and that's where a lot of the locally owned small business operate. And so that presented an opportunity for Clark County to sort of target their funds to the locally owned small business owners and operators who would have a much tougher time eating that cost. Certainly much more difficult than the corporately owned casinos. So they created the program for these businesses up to $5,000 to help with that, just to reopen and any costs that come with opening their doors again. It's a great program, and I thought it'd be nice to see what other public sector entities are doing around the country. Go ahead, Michael. And then Kevin is going to talk about the City of Cleveland programs.
So I think many of you are familiar with the working capital loan program that we've had launched since March. We've been processing and still processing funding up to $10,000 on that. But a second one that we have, and I think this will definitely pique many people's ears if you're not familiar with this one. This one is funding under the CARES Act that we got. And this is additional $20,000, but it has a forgiveness of 50%. So that should definitely get some attention. And what that would be is if businesses have incurred costs and are incurring costs for PPE, personal protection equipment that they need for their businesses as they retrofit them. And it could even be as minor things from hand sanitizer and other stuff to those plastic walls, which are quite expensive. They can go back to March 1st. They can apply for these items and additional working capital. But 50% of the costs associated with PPE will be forgiven then that they incur. So this is a great way to offset costs. Again, go to the top of our website page and you'll find a link for that, and with the directions on where to submit a simple questionnaire and application for that. And again, up to $10,000 can be forgiven. So that's a huge program financial incentive that the City of Cleveland has to help offset costs for our entrepreneurs to adapt to this difficult environment that we are all in right now. So thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you. And just to get back to that question, because I couldn't help it, I Googled it really quick just to get the exact date. It's September 27th. So it's not the end of September. It's September 27th, and the loan has to be in regular servicing status, meaning it can't be in any interest-only period. It has to be principal and interest repayments and just regular servicing status. Here is, this, I think there's a lot of interest around this topic, why businesses are being turned down, why lenders aren't lending right now. We just came out of the most ripe lending environment maybe we've ever seen. Oh, I shouldn't say that, but we've seen in a while. Capital was flowing out the doors from small businesses or from lenders to small businesses. And then abruptly, the faucets were turned off. So I'll try and explain why a little bit. This really could be the topic of its own webinar, and by no means am I an economist, but I've seen just a lot that I think I can provide a little bit of insight into what the market is doing with loan applications and who's getting funding. So first of all, the primary reason why businesses are being turned down is because right now many businesses simply can't meet conventional underwriting standards. So in order to borrow money, you have to show the bank that you can afford the loan, right? You can afford the payments. We look at it on an annual basis. And knowing that pretty much the entire country couldn't operate for 3 months, it makes it very difficult to underwrite a loan based on historic numbers, period. And if businesses aren't operating at the time they apply, or even aren't operating at what they would normally operate, then it's very difficult to underwrite and to make a financial decision on a loan application. But it's very hard for businesses to justify that they have the cash flow to support the loan right now. And then collateral, which has always been a barrier, is even more of a barrier without certainty on cash flow. And the businesses that get affected by collateral the most are retail and service-based businesses that maybe rent their space, don't have a lot of assets. They just sort of operate with people as their primary asset, or whatever assets they do have a short lifespan and are fully depreciated, don't have any book value. So collateral has always been one of the underwriting criteria that could be sort of explained away if cash flow was present, especially SBA. SBA lenders are not allowed to decline a deal with lack of collateral. That's in the SBA rulebook. But when you couple uncertainty with cash flow with very low or no collateral, it just makes it very hard to make an approval on a loan application. And then next, private sector really isn't designed to work in emergency situations, which is the cause of a lot of frustration. Businesses need cash to stay open, but the private sector is not the best source for that. And I'll talk about why, I think a few slides down, a few points down, but the private sector should never be the source for desperate capital or emergency capital. I guess one more point on that. Lenders want to fund growth and not losses. But from that earlier chart we saw, a lot of capital right now is related to funding losses or being used for emergency situations. Lenders are risk averse by nature. We know this. If banks have any perception of maybe not getting their investment return, they're probably not going to do the deal. So just by nature, they stay away from risk. And right now, there's no shortage of risk. There's a lot of wait and see, I think, happening in the industry because, to Michael's point, if there's a second round of closures, then lenders are sort of stuck with holding a loan that the business has no way of repaying, and they're going to be forced into a position where they have to either liquidate or defer, modify, and that's not obviously the best way to start with a financial relationship with the business. So there is a lot of wait and see happening just because of the uncertainty of the next even few months. Then finally, or next, we're dealing with recession-like conditions. I mean, technically we are in a recession, although the recession did not arise organically. It's sort of self-imposed for good reason. We kind of willingly shut down our economy to combat the virus. But as a result, our economy has fallen into a recession. And in all periods of recession, banks retrench, they deploy less capital. They're way more strict with their underwriting. We've seen it in the mortgage industry, and the small business lending industry is no different. Unconventional sources of capital are going to be more heavily relied upon in a recession, as they always are, and that's SBA, that's other public forms of lending. Next, the industry risk is multiplied, meaning industries that were already high risk in nature are even more exposed to risk. And that's the restaurant industry, cash-based businesses, service businesses. So just by industry, not even by underwriting and cash flow, just industry alone, those that were already high risk are the ones that need the capital the most, and also are the ones that are not getting capital the most. Because of that industry risk. And then finally, in most cases, it really would be irresponsible for a lender to say yes. What I mean by that, and this statement will become less true as time goes on and small businesses are able to weather the storm. But what I mean by that is the primary reason that capital is needed right now, as we've said before, is to fund losses. Business generate losses when expenses exceed revenue, right? So I know I sound Captain Obvious, but debt may not solve the problem that a business is experiencing. By accepting a loan, you are increasing your monthly expenses, which were already out of balance with your revenue. So it's very tough, even impossible for a lender to justify making a loan. But take that a step further. The SBA, for example, often requires lenders to take personal collateral, meaning business owners or guarantors might have to pledge their homes to get a loan, especially if the business has no collateral. So really, how could we, in good faith, allow a business owner to pledge their home as collateral for a loan that is being used to rescue the business from failure when there's no certainty that loan will be the solution to the business's problem? So in that regard, it's a very tough dilemma for us, and we have to do our part to sort of make the best decision for us as a lending institution, but also for the business and their family. Go ahead, Michael. So it's not all doom and gloom. It may not seem like it from the previous slide, but lenders are still lending. We're going to hear about a few businesses that have been able to secure financing from conventional or SBA sources. But what are we looking for? Plain and simple, we just need to understand how we're going to get repaid. It's no different than before, but it's a little more difficult to to demonstrate adequate cash flow to support new debt when a business was closed down for a few months. So a lot of lending is being done based on financial projections, or maybe even like the two most recent months of financial history, because really anything between March and June, like you can throw that out the door. So we can't really rely on historic financials because the business isn't operating as they were historically, meaning we have to rely more on projections. And some lenders just don't have the stomach to lend based on projections. For this reason, I think SBA lending is going to be there's going to be a lot more SBA volume over the next couple of years. And just quickly, for those that don't know, SBA loans work like this. The lender makes the loan to the small business, and the federal government, via the Small Business Administration, guarantees a portion of that loan. So lenders are given added security as an incentive to make more loans. But the SBA does have a very thick rule book that we need to follow in order for them to honor that guarantee if the loan goes bad. So for that reason, SBA is going to be more active, but that's, I guess, a challenge that we face. And then secondly, the COVID talk. Really, what we're going to ask, obviously, a lot of pointed questions about just how the business is dealing with the pandemic. We want to find out, are there worse days behind them? But it's hard to find that out from a conversation. The business needs to be able to produce accurate and recent numbers. I mentioned June and July financial statements, but a lot of businesses struggle with that, especially small businesses that maybe do their books once a year when they file their tax returns. And those that can't adequately generate a recent financial statement, they're not going to have a chance of getting funded. And they may be good businesses, they just can't show it on paper. So it's more of a conversation. It's actual physical, physically financial statements, their ability to back up everything they're saying with the numbers. And then, as important as historic financial statements are, projections are very important. I mentioned a lot of lending is going to be done based on projections. So can the business put together a reasonable set of projections? And that's obviously a challenge to many small businesses. It would have been a challenge to me before I started doing what I'm doing. It's not anything that comes natural. We have to learn how to put together projections. So there's going to be a lot more, I think, of a need for bank business accountants and bookkeepers to really be able to help a small business get ready for financing. But ultimately, it's how is the business affected by COVID, and have those impacts been remedied, or at least are they in the process of being remedied? What changes has the business made? What have they had to do to adapt? Was it reducing staffing? Was it increasing staffing? Some businesses are thriving right now. Did they have to adjust their operations in any way? Were they able to reduce overhead in any creative ways? Things like that. And then another important thing is how have the new health standards affected operations? So maybe the business is operating, but maybe occupancy is being restricted because of the social distancing requirements. Restaurants, I think, are enjoying being open again, but there's a lot of open tables, when you walk through a restaurant, and that's they're sort of having to handicap themselves. And when you think about it, let's say a restaurant has to operate at 60% occupancy, for example. So that's 40% of revenue that's being cut. So can the business handle debt? Let's say in 2019, if 40% of their revenue was cut. And of course you adjust the expenses too, but that's something that it's going to affect a business's ability to pay for debt. And we don't know how long that's going to last. And that makes it very, very challenging. We kind of have to assume that it's not going to go away anytime soon, and underwrite based on those assumptions. So really all of that kind of goes into when we address COVID and its effect on the small businesses. So to that point, preparation is key. There's a lot of applications being submitted to lenders right now, And those that are ready will get preferential treatment. Those that aren't ready, those applications that come in piecemeal, are not going to get, they're not going to get prioritized. And maybe if it takes a business several weeks to submit an application, or even a month, then whichever documents they submitted a month prior to when they finished submitting may start to go stale. And then we sort of enter this revolving door of constantly having to update the numbers. And it's frustrating for all parties, but it's because of the lack of preparation that we're in that position. So to that point, quality of documentation will be more important than ever. This has been a recurring theme, I know, but many businesses really do struggle with providing quality recent financial statements, and they need to be accurate. And then lastly, how exactly will the funds be used? If it's working capital, is it to fund the growth, or is it to fund losses? Because the SBA specifically is restricting us from funding losses. We're not allowed to. But if it's working capital to replenish cash that was previously used to fund losses, then there may be an argument. The business needs cash. A lot of their existing cash went to fund those losses. They got through that time. Now they're in growth mode, and now they need to replace some of that cash so that they can buy inventory and fund accounts receivable. So there's a lot of ways to go about it, but ultimately it starts and ends with growth. Growth is the operative word there. And we're happy to fund growth, even if it challenges our underwriting and makes it a little tough on us to really put together a sound argument for how the business is out of those. Even if the business is not very far removed from those challenging times, we're still happy to fund it, and I'll advocate for that business every single time if I believe that they have the ability to make it work. And then lastly, Michael, if you want to advance, small businesses are really adapting. It's for all the heartbreak that we see that we feel when we see a small business close. It's very inspiring to see a small business adapt. And what we're kind of seeing, and what I'm seeing locally, but also nationally, is a lot of pivoting in the business models. So for instance, curbside pickup is being offered. Many retailers are offering curbside pickup for the first time. Maybe, where it typically, or it traditionally would be kind of strange to see a curbside pickup offering for that business. It makes total sense now. But is there an infrastructure challenge that comes with curbside pickup? Is it a congested area? Are the businesses packed really tight together to where curbside pickup would be a challenge? And that's something that maybe CDCs can advocate to local government to make that work logistically. E-commerce really means that businesses are starting to ship their product for the first time. That they're setting up websites, they're offering their product through the mail, and it's been nice to see, and I'm sure it's been convenient for those that don't like to leave their homes as often. But it's kind of hard to compete with Amazon. It kind of puts them in that space. But I think that there's a lot of demand for local businesses that are making their product available, conveniently and through the mail. But some don't have that luxury. Like Mitchell's Ice Cream obviously couldn't ship their product, so there's still a barrier for that. Home delivery is something that is beer and ice cream being delivered to your door is now the norm, thanks to Platform and other local breweries that have started to offer that, and that's been really cool to see. Pop-up shops are taking place on our abundance of surface parking lots that aren't being used as frequently, where you can have social distancing and have businesses sort of congregate and make a nice little outdoor pop-up mall. So I'm seeing that, and that's really generating sales for retailers. Collaborations with businesses that complement the product. I'll use Platform as an example again, and my friend Vicky is the owner of Cleveland Cookie Dough. And there was a there was a story on the news where Platform and Cleveland Cookie Dough got together to pair up a beer with a cookie dough flavor. So these collaborations are allowing customers to get exposed to businesses that they may not have known about prior, and are really wonderful to see. But the next thing that businesses need to adapt to, which I'm so glad Michael said that people are starting to think about this, because I'm really worried about this, is obviously winter, when patio season is going to be over, or maybe not, because I'm hearing a lot of restaurants are beginning to prepare with buying enclosed tents, heaters, TV, decor. So don't be surprised if patio seating is still an option in January, but they need to start preparing now. And they need to have a plan for the obvious drop in revenue when it comes to winter. That happens no matter what. So one of the last things I'm going to leave you with and talk about is a Harness Cycle, and this is a business that I had the pleasure of working with, and this business and I went through a little ride together. Very, very bad pun. The owner approached me and they wanted to apply for a loan. And on March 3rd is when we started talking and really started to pick up. That's when we approved the loan. And March 3rd was of course like right on the doorstep of when we started to understand what we were dealing with. And on March 12th, the business made the decision to close their studios, and this was before the governor mandated it. They did it on their own, and it was a very noble gesture on their part. But it's hard to close a loan with a business that isn't operating. So the owner went to work, started to figure out how they can adapt and adjust their business model. And what they did was they found a virtual platform where they could offer their classes remotely. They also were able to sell equipment, because people who want to work out and do a spinning class at home need bikes, they need mats, they need weights, they need shoes. So really it turned into a remote studio offering, as well as an opportunity to sell some equipment, which they hadn't done before. And it was an incredible pivot, and really, they were competing with Peloton, but some people want their local instructors, their instructors that they've come to know, and they want to still remain in the community that they've grown quite fond of. So Harness Cycle, amazing business, amazing owner, and a great example of a business that in the face of impossible odds was able to adjust their operations, pivot, and become a very sustainable business. And of course, we went ahead and closed the loan because they were operating. They were an operational business. Finally, my advice or recommendations, or just my 2 cents on what CDCs can do. Michael, if you want to go to the next slide, is set the proper expectations for small businesses. You know a little bit more about the market than you did before. What a business needs to do to prepare themselves. It's not going to be a quick process, and some businesses don't have the patience for it. But they need to know what they're going to be dealing with. Secondly, there are some initiatives that might be able to help reduce overhead for small businesses that CDCs can play a small part in, such as rent, working with landlords and area stakeholders. I know it's hard to have that conversation, but it's a lot different if a CDC is having that conversation or explaining the need for some rent assistance to happen, versus the tenant doing it, right? I mean, it's a lot more impactful when it's a third party. Tell the stories. You guys are doing awesome about that. I know I follow all of the CDCs on Twitter, and I just see some amazing content being produced. But keep doing it. Put local faces to the businesses. We were joking the other day about how, who do we want to put money into the pocket of just Jeff Bezos or, Harness Cycle or Cleveland Tea Revival, businesses like that. And we kind of forget that. As convenient as it is for 2-day shipping, we forget the ramifications and the consequences of buying that product on Amazon versus a business that really needs our help. Be the liaison between the businesses and the local governmental entities, especially when it comes to resources. I'll end on this. There are going to be programs that are going to be available in the future or even right now. So it'd be wonderful, I think, for CDCs to sort of champion some of these programs. I know it's maybe outside of your comfort zone or your typical services, or maybe not. But if I can give you my perspective on working on PPP loans, there were so many businesses that were eligible for PPP loans. They just weren't prepared and they couldn't put together a package. And it was so frustrating for me because I want to give them money. It's basically grant money. I want to give you this money, but you can't put a package together that allows me to do that. And I didn't have the time, and processors for those loans didn't have the time to handhold. There was incredible volume, and the more time we spent on a business that wasn't ready was the less time that we could spend on 10 businesses that were. So many of them just didn't get funded. They didn't get their loans, and it was tough. And it would be great for some local organization to really walk them through that process, become the one-stop shop for navigating the application process of all these resources, more so than just telling them about the resources. Helping them apply, I think, would go a long way, and it will get resources into the hands of businesses that really, really need them. So that's all I have on my portion. I know I went kind of long, but I'm glad to be able to sort of offer my insight, and I really would love to hear from you all, whether it's now or in the coming days. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. Yeah, this is a very important topic when it comes to making sure that our businesses are prepared for the various types of funding opportunities out there in our retail districts. Thank you. So we got a quick quiz from Kevin.
Yeah. So if you can quickly respond to this in 15 seconds, and we'll see whoever gets this. And the winners who know the answer to this, I will treat them to a cup of coffee, a social distance cup of coffee, or maybe when this pandemic is over with, from a local small business, a beverage. What is 188 billion? I think we have a few more seconds. Please respond quickly. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think we're going to cut it off. The answer, and then Pam will get back to me. This is the net worth of Jeff Bezos. This was mentioned several times. Why do we bring this up? Why is this important as we wrap up here? This is why all the more important on why we need to think of creative ideas and thoughts and what to do to help our respective neighborhood small businesses survive during this pandemic here, because it is tough, and I think it's only going to get worse. I've got something from Columbus Business First that I want to read this here. It's just a quick few sentences. And this kind of ties this in. Economists fear that the economic shock of the COVID-19 pandemic will prove ruinous for tens of thousands of mom and pops, with dire consequences not only for the businesses affected, but also for the independent entrepreneurial streak that is hardwired into the nation's psyche. So those are some tough words, but hopefully it'll also motivate all of us to think even creatively, even more so to take action for our respective small businesses. And Michael, I think you have the final thought.
Yeah, the final thought really is I think that's a good way to leave out. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for David and Kevin for participating and helping me through the presenting this information. Thank you all who joined. Thank you to Melinda, Pam, as well as Colleen for putting this on. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I guess we'll open it up to questions now.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Just some quick comments and then questions from Nina Holzer. She writes, as a small business owner, we've already taken on so much debt and really cannot take on more. In normal times, we would save a portion of the money we would make in spring, summer, and fall in order to get through the winter. What we received in PPP helped us float through the summer, but we certainly won't get through the winter. I anticipate that businesses who cannot take on more debt will not make it through this winter. We need more flexible, forgivable loans and grants.
I couldn't agree more, Nina. I appreciate that, and kind of what I was saying earlier is debt isn't always the solution, especially when PPP has been available. The EIDL program was available. Those were loans directly from the SBA with very friendly repayment terms. But what I'm worried about is a lot of businesses filling their balance sheet with debt, and at some point, that is a new fixed cost for the business for the foreseeable future. So even when a business comes out of this, it's going to be more expensive to operate that business. So it's a fair point. It's something that I agree with, and I have to tell businesses that, like, debt is not what you need right now, and debt won't solve this problem for you. So it's a fair point, and yeah, we definitely need more very patient forms of debt, or forgivable loans, or grant money, which are typically offered by government.
And then there was also a link shared, interestfree.org from HFLA that Kevin had mentioned earlier. So thank you, Katie, for sharing that link. And then there were a few more questions that we'll get to. If we can't get through all of these, we will certainly circle back with everyone via email and help answer that if we do hit our 11:30 mark. So the next question is from Bob Brown. Do you see the long-term impacts of COVID-19 combined with the ongoing impacts of internet shopping resulting in a continued reduction in brick and mortar retail occupancy in urban retail districts?
Man, I hope not. I'm not the retail expert. I'll let one of y'all take that, but I hope not, Bob. I worry about that too.
Bob, I really believe that we're going to get to a normal. Some of the studies that I've been reading is that many of the business owners think it's going to probably take another 6 to 12 months for everything to get normal. But I really believe that a lot of people really want that in-person experience that we were mentioning earlier in the presentation. They really do want to go to places, get out the house. Yes, Amazon. I mean, I enjoy shopping on Amazon, but I do even more so enjoy spending time getting out of the house and actually just going through those very experimental or experiential type of shopping experiences with family and friends. So I believe that there is certain habits that are actually taking place, which can be a good thing for some folks, but I think that we'll probably never lose that kind of in-person touch. And I think that we have entrepreneurs that are also very creative in making sure they can get people out the doors as well too.
Yeah, a few things that some restaurants have done that I've been hearing with additional revenue is they've limited items on their menu. They've increased the cost. They've packaged things, so you might gotten some a la carte. They've put in a couple other things and they've packaged it, and they've even added additional surplus and a cost for something like that to help make it their wherewithal because of they don't have the volume like they used to. So that's just one of many different ways that people are being creative. And if you know of these things, please send them on here. We'll capture these things and then share that with everyone. The other thing that I would say to the last question there on the grants, the available grants on that, if they become available, similar like the grant opportunity 3 weeks ago, and all what it was, I think it was a 150-word questions on why you should get a $15,000 grant. It was easy. Get those things out and submit, because that also, grants are great, but if they come available and they have a short window of opportunity, share with everybody that we can get this out to help get this out to our respective retail entrepreneurship businesses.
And then just an add-on to that question, if retail and restaurant occupancy continues to decline in urban retail districts, Do you see a need to repurpose some storefronts in a way that continues to support some level of street side pedestrian activity and vibrancy?
I'll jump in on that. Absolutely. I think some has been done. I think not only the city of Cleveland, but other communities with the modifications to the streets and the sidewalks for additional curbside. But I think even there's going to be much modifications to the restaurants that are going to be needed more so than just PPE. I think construction renovation that's going to need to be done to accommodate physical distance barriers, I think. So I foresee that also something happening on that.
And then there's a comment, there's a comment from Bara Watts. Hardest hit are the businesses in low income or marginal markets. They won't have businesses like Harness Cycle. How can we build some kind of collective to support them?
That's a good question.
Well, Michael, we could tell. I mean, there already are collectives specifically to support the businesses in low-income areas or minority-owned businesses. Michael and I worked on a few together where we provided grants that were on a scoring system that prioritized low-income areas or minority-owned businesses, because we all recognize that those businesses whom already were less likely to get capital when times were good are even less likely right now. So that's even more reason for us to prioritize businesses in those areas. But that's not enough. I mean, there's obviously more that can be done, and I'd love to hear some thoughts about that.
Yeah, Business Growth Collaborative is this has been around for at least 3-4 years, I believe, and that is a collaborative that's been actually increasing its membership so that we're able to support small businesses, specifically minority businesses. So that collaborative, I mentioned it earlier through the Business Growth Compass. We're using that tool as well as the meetings that we attend on a regular basis to support businesses. I think it'll be a good start for those businesses that are having trouble finding support.
Okay, and then there's a comment just from Citizens Bank regarding the Citizens Bank Minority-Owned Small Business Grant Program. Stay tuned for announcements of awardees, and there's a link to contact Citizens Bank as well in the chat. And then there's a question from Jessica. She says, just curious, why has the city structured the CARES Act small business relief as a loan as opposed to grants for working capital?
I think with a lot of the federal requirements on that, on what we can use the funds for and what we cannot use the funds for. And also there's just only so much money that we can do on that. So those were some things with following the restrictions of the federal guidelines on what or how we can use the funds, and then also best on what we can do for businesses to kind of spread their wealth the best that we can. I mean, the good thing though is with the forgiveness portion, it converts to a grant as long as they've met the requirements of purchasing the PPE. So it converts to a grant component. It's initially structured as a loan, but it's forgiven up to 50%. So the program is there, the funding is there. Businesses need that. I would definitely encourage them to apply for that to get additional PPE, especially if they need to retrofit their businesses. So.
Thank you. And then just the last comment in the chat, and I think this is also a challenge for everybody, not just the presenters, is from Bara Watts, who says, I challenge us as a community to think about ways to drive sales with our local businesses. And then she kind of just says, any ideas, please share.
I think just one other comment, if I could say, and I think in the Detroit Shirley Cudell neighborhood, another business that opened up last year was a fairly new business. When the COVID hit, they'd only been in business for about 5-6 months. And so they were pretty new trying to establish themselves. But when the COVID hit, this was a plant store on Clifton Boulevard over there called Cleveland Urban Planting. But they changed their format on how they did business. And they went to the social media, Instagram, and how they did business. And what they have shared with me is they've done all right in a difficult time. It's made a difference in helping their business get through this. And I think that's the message. That may not be the answer for all the businesses, but I think what is it in addition, not only just securing capital, but what is it that we need to do to change our thought and how we do business and how we're going to get customers. I think that's the other part of the equation that's very, very, very important, because cash is only part of the equation. You know, customers is the other part, and you have to have both in order to succeed this COVID-19.
All right.
If there are no more, I'm sorry, is there a question? All right, if there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Michael, Kevin, David, thank you so much for all of the rich information that you shared with us today, for this presentation, for being willing to share with community and economic development professionals your experience. It is incredibly helpful, incredibly appreciated. Pam and Melinda, thank you again for helping to pull this together. As I said at the beginning, be on the lookout for announcements about upcoming workshops and progress talks. This, as you know, is the kickoff to our Progress Institute being held virtually and a little earlier than normal. It is our pleasure to bring these capacity development opportunities to all of you. Thanks for joining us today, and a special hello to those that are joining us from outside of the Cleveland region. And I look forward to seeing you all in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.